Rape culture in Zambia is very rampant.
There's a Bemba premarital lesson conducted by female marriage counselors called Vanachimbusa. One of these lessons is called Inkoko Yanshele, where the bride-to-be is given a live chicken to kill by sitting on it with her buttocks until it dies. The chicken in this lesson represents her marital house, and her sitting silently until it dies signifies how women should always keep secrets in their homes, specifically pertaining to their husbands. Should they get bitten, raped, or watch their husbands abuse their children, their role is to silently sit and keep their homes secret.
We have these traditions that just don't even recognize rape.
Rape culture and the Zambian culture, I think our culture does have a huge role to play, because a lot of the times we've been told boys will always be boys, the man's dominance is okay and our consent doesn't matter.
In the my wife thing, they will grab you, they will touch your breast, they will slap your ass without any consequence, and you can't even say that, because if you say you're uncomfortable or if you say they touched me in this way, you're going to be accused of being fast.
Culture is defined as the ideas, customs, and social behavior of a particular people or society. Zambia, like most countries in Africa and in the world, share a particular number of cultures, from how we raise children to how we celebrate our past and the beginning of a new season.
When you're getting married and the marriage counselors Vanachimbusa are teaching you, they're going to tell you even if you're sick, your vagina is not sick.
So then you find men wanting to have their way with women because they know that society is going to support them and society will make the excuse for them. So they know that even if they raped 1,000 women in a day, society is going to still support them and shield them.
Due to our culture and our traditions, sometimes we tend to opt to resolve cases out of court. So you find that people will sit down and discuss, pay each other cows, or money will exchange hands, and then you find that a case will not proceed. Witnesses will be compromised. Some will come to court and just say, I don't know why I'm here, I don't want to testify, and so you find that cases like that will be lost. Sometimes you find witnesses will relocate. We've had cases where a whole village has moved. All the key witnesses have moved. So then as prosecutors, our hands are tied. We cannot prosecute without witnesses and victims.
We have especially female who are the majority victims who fail to report these cases because culturally they're not expected to report their husbands. Culturally, people still believe that a husband can beat a wife. Culturally, some societies still believe that when your husband beats you, then they love you. If they don't beat you, then they do not love you.
It's a disgusting culture.
While not all Zambians share the same culture, there are a few cultures that Zambians seem to agree on, and one of those is rape culture. From the way we treat victims of sexual violence to how we violently defend rapists and create an environment where rapists thrive and victims die. Rape culture is in everything we do and practice. From how our universities spend years dictating how female students should dress while blissfully ignoring the sexual assault pandemic happening in their offices, hostels, and school grounds, to police forces determined to sexually assault female officers and denying female victims justice, to our leaders who violently defend marital rape, misuse funds meant to fight sexual and gender-based violence, and to traditions and religions that directly promote the violence that women and girls face. From the outside, Zambia is considered one of the most peaceful countries in the world, and yet somehow, the United Nations Women states that Zambia has one of the highest sexual assault cases in the world.
Incident yanga inachitika ninabisa but mu mazulo pantenze kuja na wanzanga nachita decide ati niwauze vye vinachitikira Panena bauza bananchita encourage ati ninde ku hospital because vevina chitika be dangerous both mental na health yanga. Ndimo meneni naendera ku hospital. Ku hospital nakumanya ba junior doctor beba nashimikira vonse vevina chitika. Bananipasa advice yakuti ibintu vaso sufunika kuvisunga kuli we mwine weka ufunika wauzako bantu ufunika wachita na report ku police so that bakutandiza naonana kuchita vaso bamugwira. So panena chika hospital sinaende ku police nize nayopa because kambiri ni maona bantu baba seka baba sheminga na kwa mene ku police kwa mene kuja bamambo kubaonera mu bantu so nayopa first naenda kunyumba na ngalako. Second day jepane manje ni namba naenda ku police na peza ba police paja pasogolo banifunza venenzo funa na balondolera no block nuza tinikambe vonse vevina chitika. So ine sinaziwe atiba victim support nimwe nambero bashimikira abra bakambati sorry chaipa maningi but unkaleko pansi pangono embekeze ba victim support officer. So ine nadamba so abantu bafuna chomvera story yanga but si area yawe. Ndimwe ninankalira babwera ba victim support officer ndimwe bananitanira mu office mwawo. So ine namba na yopa nati bani judginga because uyu muntu enze munzanga kuchoka mu grade 9 tenzo kona bonse mu room lo bali 6 tenzo nkacha bebwino because tenze ma students bonse but na double chabati banzatu banasala club eve achitabaso. So nabalondolera still more nezovera kuipa babra banifunsa kwane bangampezi temwe tinaendera kuja tamtenga na police bamene mezwana brabankala very understanding kuline mezwana mbo manashita vintu munga there's a case wazanishita believe temwe tinaendera tamugwira mpeka ku police bamufunsa ma statement yatu yanapalana but anabra kana chabati vija vintu sana bichite kuli bene kumvomekeza anakamba ati namvomekeza. So babra banuza every statement yake so nailembe yanga banailemba banuza tinichoke mu room so that balembe statement yake zimwe ninachukiramo nankala panja babra bamupeleka na masales bamumanga na banaenda kunyumba babululu bake babra bambontumira mafoni kapena na batumira phone ni events nizi babanzake bambonitukwana kunuza nifuna chain drama oloba nilipile uninekechabe kumunamizira ati anachita vija vintu ati ni muntu wa mshema ningi. So nabana so kama nao wa police na tabantu abanivuta ntumira mafoni kapena mgantanze kombalese kuchita communicate na ine bani yofya bafuna ni kumanya shani patinikana ba police banase kachabe no niyanga ati ndimwe vimankalira hivi vintu kachita report muntu. So ine baja bantu nabaoza ati ngamfuna niona mu bankalepo bakapokola because ne niyopa munganimenye munganipae bambili vinganchitikire banambra bakambatoke. So ndimwe ne manko zake babili banabwerera no news ati no amboni uza kwa niba masebenza ni bantu bakulu maningi bamba kuniofya vija kunuza ati sinza kapeza ponchito mu life mwanga bamba no news ati so ni kambe chabe price ya nini funa drama za nini funa nileke kuvutisa mwana wao. So ninabaoza nati sinishira ibintu drama nishira because uyu muntu ananishira ruin life yanga ananishira defile and then enze munzanga nam trusting about ananchita betray banaka na vonse evo after na balangiza ma pictures ya vonse vevina chitika na ma conversations yanga na yake banabra bazichefya all of a sudden abo kama ma sorry stina chitekele vaso so ufuna tikutandizile bwanji. So inaona tabachita understand na vaneni kamba hivi vavitenga ti jili serious vanisha na believe. Kuna mbako apita kwa 1 month mu December manje babra wantumira wa victim support ati inkani enda ku court. So mukabwele uja muntu aenda ku court aindo pasa statement yake kapena aindo chita plea hearing panakamba plea hearing ataenda kuchita plea hearing. So tema unebana niuzira after kwa pita time timwe tinaendela monse court even zari beba lawyer, so even yenzo nifunsa ma question na brambo nifunsa ma question ya mnia favoring a hivi. So nimwe na nkita ma question ya ja na babra waitana ma witness vanga vanibana nitanzo kopa ma pictures babaitana babafunsa ma question kuli ba lawyer bayanka pamene pachapa niwenzo funo langiza ba judge evidence bamuna chabebe nangumu kuja kwani kuma nkama lawyers no bro yankati kuchita chabe interrupt no bro kamba teve bazamchita represent, so teach the adjourn chanija court session. So ina nadaba wanaweve ba judge wanabra bavomera na evidence just wanaioni kuchoka hapo kwa tingenze last day anetina yendapo court of manje in 2022 yonse tikaenda court eve sabwirako yonse tikaenda court eve sabwirako ba doctor nona ni checking awonse bakabwera eve sabwirako. So nafunza eve ali na my rights bwanji simulandu yakuti eve court sabwira spenzo niyanka benzonuza chabe awe vimachitika ibintu vaso. So ine kuli nenamvera munga abantu bonse bana bapasa drama kuti bakazinchita so ine because nizoenda na family yanga kuja court kafika batuza chabe atitashita adjourn to next month futhi banuza tashita adjourn to next month futhi banuza so chabe bakamanje mnoni February batuza ati tashita futhi adjourn yelo month ya nibwirapo azanka lako. So siniza kapena ni justice system kaya kapena bana pasa chabe drama banja bantu but vija vintu ninachita na move on.
While Zambia has an impressive history of adopting policies that promote gender equality, like the Maputo Protocol, and has an impressive gender and equity bill, it is far from being considered a safe country for women in terms of equality and safety, especially pertaining to sexual and gender-based violence. Zambia has an embarrassing reputation of neglecting the safety of women and girls, and an overworked and underfunded justice system that women simply do not trust, with the police turning away victims and abusing them, physically and mentally, and a slow and expensive court process that takes, in some cases, years for victims to get an ounce of justice. The fact is, attaining justice in Zambia as a regular woman is a nightmare that hundreds, if not thousands of women prefer not to participate in.
Okay, from the police, which is the first point in accessing justice, usually we have a problem with transport. For example, at station level, we usually have, for example, one vehicle, and then if that vehicle has gone out to investigate other reports, to follow up other reports, then it means that these cases will only be followed up when the vehicle is back.
You also have challenges where sometimes police stations are very far away from where victims may reside. So you find that something may have happened to a victim, but when they think of walking maybe 100 kilometers to the next police station, they may not embark on that long journey.
There's also need to provide the rules that will enhance the fast movement of cases from place of arrest to the court within a record time, and for trial to commence immediately. A plea is taken while the evidence is fresh. Why do I say so? At the time the matter is reported, you find that the matter will be reported the same day the victim has been defiled or raped. But you find that from that day, by the time the matter is brought before court, it is after 3-4 months.
And when the vehicle is back, it's not a matter of certainty, It may go for investigations for the whole day, longer than 24 hours, depending on the area of operation where they're flowing a report. And so the effect it has is that the SGBV case will be delayed in terms of being followed up. And then, as you know, that the more you delay in investigating a case, the more the criminals get further and the more evidence you lose.
With sexual, gender-based violence units such as the Victim Support Unit and fast-track courts being constantly underfunded, one begs to ask, what does our country do with the funds donated to fight sexual, gender-based violence? Who really is benefiting from these funds when justice continues to be a myth for many sexual, gender-based violence victims?
In October 2018, I got physically raped on a Friday of closing school, and I was under a lot of stress, pressure, anxiety. I didn't know what to do, but I came to terms with it. So Saturday morning, I went to the school clinic, and fortunately for me, it was still operating at the time. I met a nurse there who attended to me. She did all the necessary checkups because I explained what had happened to me at the time. And she wrote in the reports that I was abused, that I had bruising on my privates. So I was devastated. I realized then that this was real and it happened to me. So I asked the nurse how I was going to go about this whole thing and how I was going to report my case to the police, and her response crushed me. She looked me in the face and she said, if only you did not go drinking and partying, this wouldn't have happened to you. Abstain from alcohol and keep away from parties. Only those that know God and receive Jesus, these things don't happen to them. After everything, I left, I went home. I pretended at home like nothing happened, and home was in another province. I didn't show any signs of being depressed, angry at the world, or anything. I was just calm. On a Monday, I decided to rest. Tuesday, I went to the clinic in my province where I live, and I got checked on again. And there, the judgment that they gave me, you know, that kind of feeling when you want to open up to people, but you know just from the way they look at you that they're disgusted by you, and they tell you to your face that you should be ashamed because you were raped. But I still told my story. I told them what happened, they checked me out, and so I went back home. I told my sister, who later on told my mom. And the second morning, my mom and I went to the police. When we got there, they said the matter was out of their jurisdiction and that we had to go back to the province where I was in, where the incident happened, and report the case. My mom and I went back home, and we decided to travel to the province where everything happened. We went there and we reached late at night, and the police just brushed us off. They told us there was no case to open, in that because I was drinking alcohol, there was no case, there was just no case. But my mom did not accept that fact. She stood her ground and she said they had no right to judge a case by not even allowing me to give a statement. So after much shouting from my mom and telling them what to do, basically telling them their job, they finally agreed to give my statement. And that was all I could do that day. My mom and I lodged that night. Early in the morning, we went back to the police and they said we had to go to the clinic where my first examination was done from. And we did. We went there and met the same nurse, and she told us that she couldn't give us the file because she wasn't allowed to. I don't know what law says that, but she wasn't allowed to give us the case file. So the police said there was nothing they could do, but they would get an order from the court and go back to the clinic and get the file. So me and my mom had to go back to my province. So I decided to call the police to ask them how much progress they've had ever since we left in October. And they told me that my case was closed. And I asked them why my case was closed, and they tell me directly without even going through corners that my case was just closed, and that was all I needed to know. So through Twitter, I come across SistahSistah Foundation, and the moment I just told them my story, they gave me a contact to a lawyer who advised me to go to the Victim Support Unit headquarters and explain what happened. So I go to the Victim Support Unit, which was based in Lusaka, and I tell them my story. And of course, telling them my story again felt so frustrating. Everything that happened to me, I had to tell them again. And it was hard. But I told them, and they gave me an order to go back to the police, and clearly ordering the police to do their job, to open my case, because the case was still there and there was so much evidence. And why a nurse would refuse to give me a file that belonged to me and it had evidence. I go to the police and they're so shocked as to what I was even doing there, why I was making so much noise. And I told them that this was my case, this happened to me, and I was going to go through with it until I got justice. I leave the file there, I go back home, back to my province, I call them, and then they tell me, this is now in May of 2019, and then they tell me, we don't have to talk about this to the phone, you have to come personally. So I moved from my province back to the other province where I was schooling, and they still told me the same thing, the case is closed. So I felt frustrated. I went back to school, and then I couldn't concentrate, I couldn't do anything. I lost it, I couldn't learn. My friends lost touch with me because they said I was doing these things that were unnecessary. I should just shut up and walk away from this and let it go. They told me it happens and I should just keep quiet about it. So I dropped out of school. June of 2020, I get a strange call from a strange number, and this person introduces themselves as a victim support unit personnel, and that they were reopening my case and that they were going back to my school to get the case file. And I am shocked. Why now, after everything I went through to get justice for myself? It's like I felt mocked, like, okay, are they trying to test me or something? See if, I just didn't know what to think at the point. But I just kept my cool, and I was like, oh, okay, you need anything from me? They said they were just informing me of how they were going to go about my case and go back to my school, get the case file, and that we had to do this together. They even said they were going to provide transportation for us to meet in between and lodging and stuff, and that was exactly what we did. So I call my lawyer and she tells me the same thing, like, these things take time and I'm sorry that it's taken 2 years for them to get you justice. And I feel like, okay, finally there's going to be justice. So we do that, we get the case file, we go back to victim support unit, they say they'll open the case, investigations will go on, I should go back to school and I should move on with my life. If anything happens, they'll get back to me. So I didn't call them for updates, I did not pressure them to do anything, because at this point I think I was expecting disappointment. I just felt like this is too good to be true. And I just let it go. Now we're in 2022, there was no reports, there was no nothing. And now I'm thinking, will we ever get justice? Will we ever get to feel that I tried my best and it worked out? Are we as victims just going to always be left out of the justice system? Nothing's ever going to work because they don't have funds.
On 12th August 2021, millions of Zambians took to the polls to vote out a repressive regime. with hopes to move in a better and safer country. The new government has provided hope and promised a complete revamping of the country. What Zambian women would like to know is if this new dawn includes women and girls' safety and ensures access to justice. Does it include a restructuring of the justice system, proper funding of sexual and gender-based violence units, and a countrywide campaign to end rape culture? Or is it like every other government that only ever saw women's worth at the polls and had no care if they were being abused or raped?
What we need to do as a country, as stakeholders in the fight against gender-based violence, is to ensure that we have services for victims. This includes having adequate shelters, having adequate financial and economic support for survivors. We need also to have a lot of robust sensitizations, in that we do have a culture that condones gender-based violence. So we need to have all these engagements with people in society to understand that this is not a vice that will be tolerated, that we need to ensure that men, women, boys and girls enjoy their human rights.
A large onus when it comes to this fight rests on the shoulders of the leaders. You know, we voted for them, and as you saw in the last election, the majority of votes came from youth and women. So we have the power. If we all learned to demand, to hold them socially accountable, it is our right to actually go to them and say, you are not doing enough in this area, and this is what we need to do. So even in our own communities, we need to learn to mobilize ourselves and just hold these people accountable. And even then, there's a lot of backlash. And I feel, even as a student leader, as you're pushing for these things, you're stepping on a lot of people's toes. Because it's possible that even in these universities, within management, within our lecturers, within our tutors, we have perpetrators. And so when you're pushing for something that's good, that's progressive, they're going to want to shoot you down. And I think it's the same thing that's going to be happening even with members of parliament. And I know there are some members of parliament that are going to watch this and they will be triggered to want to push for it in parliament. And they'll be shot down by other members of parliament, but you need to be resilient. You need to be strong and tough and know that you're speaking on behalf of so many young women in your constituency and other constituencies. And you'll be contributing to making Zambia a safe place for women. We do not want to see rapists and abusers get pardoned by presidents after serving only a small chunk of their sentence. We want rapists and abusers to be made examples of, to a point where no matter how motivated an abuser is going to be to rape someone, they will have a minute to themselves where they'll probably think, this is what happened to the last person that was caught doing this, so is it worth it for me to go through this?
We make an effort as a collective, as a country, to curb the vice of gender-based violence. And also not forgetting the legal framework. There are some legal provisions of the law that are quite prohibitive, especially when dealing with evidence against children. They require corroboration. And knowing the nature of gender-based violence, it is an offense that is committed in private. So if you say that a child's evidence needs to be corroborated, sometimes it's challenging to find that corroborative evidence. So we may need to review some of our laws to make them more victim-friendly.
They do not learn about the law. So what if we extended the training and included maybe just one short semester, one short term, where they get to learn about the law, the constitution, what it says, and how to handle certain situations.
We need to also have more sensitizations of our laws. So you'll find that people are not aware that you can apply for a restraining order in Zambia. Sometimes people think this is what you hear of in America. Oh, yeah, I got a restraining order against this person who's stalking me, who's harassing me. We have the Anti-Gender-Based Violence Act. A person can apply for a protection order. So we also need a lot of sensitizations and discussions with the public so that they can claim their rights, so that they can access the laws that are available for them.
What can be done to end sexual and gender-based violence is, first of all, an attitude change. And this is such a mammoth task because we are sitting on years and years of culture, and this is a culture that, as we had said earlier, is it sort of promotes rape. But if we're going to see a shift where sexual and gender-based violence is concerned, we need an attitude change, and we need thought leaders to start these conversations and stick with them, not have the conversations because the United Nations or Action Aid have given you money to talk about it, not because they've given you money to do a him for her campaign. You have to be able to speak about this in a way that it has impact, in a way that it is consistent and continuous, and people can see that this is actually a crisis and many people are very concerned about it.
In as much as we have the laws, you have the penal code that prescribes, gender-based violence, assaults, murders, sexual offenses. We have the Anti-Gender-Based Violence Act. We have the Gender Equity and Equality Act. The law and ourselves as legal practitioners, we cannot solely sort out the problems of gender-based violence. It's also a societal issue.
There's a need to change the language. I've noticed this in newspapers especially. I don't know if they're trying to sound funny. They try to make puns out of sexual assault cases that make it to the news. They try to make it funny, they try to make it sensational, but there is nothing funny about rape. We need to give it the gravity that it deserves, whether we're talking about it on TV, whether we're talking about it in our homes, whether we're reporting about it in the newspapers. It needs to be spoken about it with the right terms.
So if we're still going to have the subordination of women and girls, if we're going to have a society where girls are not deemed to be intelligent enough to go to school, girls are not given opportunities to work in certain professions, we still believe that it's okay for a man to beat his wife, that it's an act of love, then there's only so much that the law can do. So we also need to ensure that as the law is also progressing, that our culture and our norms also progress. And I think that will be the best way in which we can fight gender-based violence. The law cannot do it on its own. Society needs to change.
1736 hours. Nilichokera ku school ku preventive maintenance. Ndipenda kumanya nyamata sini muziba. But after na bwana ndira zina yake ni Emmanuel. So munyamata ananiposha linachita monga apita. Na abwelera kumbuyo lena ndonza kumusisi anipeleka Msanga mbali mwa road. After anipeleka Msanga mbali mwa road ananivula kovala anrepinga. After anrepinga nina anataba na ninambopunda nakalabira mu road, so bantu benzo opita bananyamula nokunipeleka kuli Mbuya. So the following day ndipenda bauza Mbuya baby nachitika niva so mbera bwanje. Lucky Mbuya benze vanisi nje kwa checking banipeleka na ku hospital paka clinic kafupi. After tafika kuja bana wafunza mfuna kwenda ku polisi. Mbuya banakamba first tizibe health yake alichebu ino chibwanje nje mwana nitwitira wanitunga vilonda banipasa na mkwala mapenkila zitabwelera na kunyumba. Apa pitako 2 weeks banani peleka futi ku hospital kwendo checking akapena ko libina mvina chitikako. So tunaenda ku hospital banani pima bawauza ati mukabwera after 1 week 1 day tunabwelera na bwana pezeka teni na mimba. So jemwe tunabwelera ku nyumba na Mbuya tangala bana bamami bana benze banabisa Mbuya. Ero jamnyama tandura nani repinga anataba sienzo zibika kumpeza. Abortion nezofuna age time, but after naganzapo kabiri katatu mwetenzo ponzilira ati bamafa kuchosa mimba ukalimfana chanchana. Tona bwana ankala tano it's fine Mbuya nizangala chena mwana nengani operation bazanchita operate no problem. given na bwana vumila yemwe nankalira mpaka mimba 9 months wanankala na mwana mukazi but uja mwana ine nizomuzonda chewe maningi kumuzonda sinizofuna na kunkala na ina pafupi ya by then nina 13 years nifuna kusobera kwendo cha game na banzanga nifuna kusobera kupikirira so then akambolira sinenzomvera bwino polisi nizofuna kwenda but ku police challenges eliko polisi yenze kuyenda 36 kilometers kuchoka pamene tenzoyenda so kwenda na njinga kwenzelibe unipereka kona njinga bashukuru nishisi bakwanisa kuchoka njinga that's why sitinaende ku polisi vevina nchita affect kuchokera pevina chitikira kufika na manje pano life yanga inaoneka monga yanga miserable because ku school sinachite concentrate nezo zibati nilina mwana benangu bakutizinga kai muziba kutizinga kusukuma sila ukangala muri vaso benangu bakuitana kwa ya mwana ku school mu class na ma teachers benangu benzo yitana so chavi so vinanchita ndinakhala cheuja wakuti muntu akaniuza checho nibabisa mutima nimakalipa che ma dreams yanga yonse yanaunongeka vonse chabe vinaunongeka counseling sinaendeko chifukwa kwenzelibe okamba papa counseling ku hospital venenzofuna kuti vanitandizire nenzofuna vanitandizire munjira amene vanganitandizireko nene ku bapolisi nezofuna kuti babwere bachite investigate uja mlandu so that maybe ngati sembe ndinapeza ko tandizo yosiyanako sembe wenze wana taking amo chipani manje kwenzelibe chani kwenzelibe bapolisi wana sitina bachitemo involve then ku school vamene nenzofuna kuti vanzanga bazini treater nenzofuna kuti baone kuti sinachitire dala nenzofuna cheva nchiteko understand kuti chenapitamo chenze chopepa.
Welcome to Zambia, the peaceful African nation where every 3 hours a girl is raped. The home of the mighty Zambezi and one of the least gender equal countries in the world, where 1 in 4 women aged between 15 to 49 has experienced sexual assault.
We are absolutely not safe as women in Zambia, and this is because, first of all, instead of just telling men not to be violent or to cause violence against us, we are taught to not walk alone at night. We're taught to lock our homes with 5-6 locks on one door.
Women are living in fear, and this shouldn't be the case.
You know, it doesn't matter whether you're outside, it doesn't matter whether you're inside your house, a man is going to come and is going to violate you in any way, and there's absolutely no accountability in the discussion of safety.
Feel free to live life in the same way that men do. I don't think men are always looking at the time when they're about to leave work. They're not worried about being attacked every day as much as women are.
I doubt there are men who will not sleep through the night thinking somebody's going to come in the house and rape them.
Just dressing up in maybe a short skirt or shorts is a serious problem for a lot of male folk, because they're saying you're triggering us. Oh no, it's now your fault because now you're wearing a short skirt, and now I'm going to rape you because you're wearing a short skirt.
When I'm working, there's so many reasons that I would be walking home late at night. I'm working late. I had an emergency. I just want to take a walk, because it's a nice evening out. But if anything happened to me on that walk, it's going to be, what were you doing out there alone? It is never, what kind of man is going to see an innocent woman walking and go and try and go and sexually assault her or commit violence against her? So we are really not safe, whether we're at home, whether we're in the church.
So already everything that a female does in Zambia is scrutinized.
The entire conversation around the safety of women is directed at what women are supposed to do to keep safe.
Welcome to Zambia, deep in the heart of Africa, with a female population of over 9 million and about 20,000 sexual and gender-based violence cases reported annually. The peaceful democratic beacon of Africa, where only less than 10% of sexual and gender-based violence cases make it to trial, and over 50% of those cases are dropped at police level. This is Zambia, where the smoke that thunders never sleeps and the female population is left to fend for itself as rapists thrive in harmony.